So we got us a new witch today, you guys, and I really think that you're kind of gonna feel bad about this story. Maybe not feel bad, but sad. And I actually made a connection in the story that I don't think anybody else has really made, because the person that we're talking about today has been tried 3 times for witchcraft at this point. Those 3 times in her life are not the only times that she's been in trouble, okay? But we're going to get into it. My name is Brandy, by the way. If you're new here, I do dark history stories, the stories that nobody hears. I pull them out and I research them, and I bring you the story. While I do that, I put makeup on my face. If you want to know what I'm using, I drop it below in the description box. But other than that, yeah, that's what we do here. And I just tell the story, bring it back to life, and it's a lot of fun. So if you think that sounds awesome, please subscribe if you don't mind. And yeah, let's go on ahead and jump right on into this, as we are talking about Eunice Cole today. Actually, her name throughout this will be Goody Cole, because she was an indentured servant for the beginning of her life. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's just go ahead and get the party started. So let's talk about Goody Cole a little bit and kind of get to know her, because this is her story. And so we have a girl, and she's married, and her and her husband are indentured servants. They were born in England, okay? And they were indentured servants for a long time in England. And then once their contract ran up, they asked the guy that they were being an indentured servant for, they're like, hey, can you pay for our way to America? They wanted to come to America. They wanted to start a new life here. The promises of freedom and land and plentifulness and all that fun stuff had reached their ears, and so they decided they wanted to go to America. And they do, and they end up in Boston, and they were given 2 acres of land, okay, while they were there. Now, it was only 2 acres because, like I say, they were house servants, and so it's not like he was a farmer. He didn't have that much farming knowledge, and so they were kind of disappointed with the 2 acres that they got, but they were grateful for what they had, okay, but they end up leaving. Now, this is the point where I'm kind of like wondering, okay, so they end up, they're Christians, these two, this husband and wife. They are Christians, but they follow this man named Reverend John Wilbright. Okay, now this guy was a firm believer in something called, and I practiced this word so many times yesterday, and watch me say it wrong, antinomianism. Oh, got it. Antinomianism. That I did not know what it was. So, and you're probably wondering, what the crap is that too? Well, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. So basically, they had this view of rejecting anyone who does not follow the law. Basically, it's weird. It's like they're saved and they can do whatever they want, like even break the 10 commandments, because they're saved. And so that it basically kind of gives them this weird Christian belief that they take basically they say that it's a license to sin. Okay, faith alone is what guarantees your place in heaven, according to these people. You can imagine now, this reverend, he gets ran out of town because of his views. Now, the Coles decide to go with him, decide to follow him, okay, and they end up in Hampton, all right? They decide to follow this guy, so you got to keep this in mind. They would berate people that didn't follow the laws they thought that those people were supposed to follow, and things of that matter, okay? Along with this religion, okay, they had their views of rejecting anybody who doesn't follow the law. They would argue against moral and religious or social norms. So they were very argumentative. They were very pushy about their faith. And, you know, not a lot of people like that, of course, and they didn't like the fact that these people thought that just because they believed in God, that, you know, that they were exempt from all law, basically. They could do whatever they wanted to, in their opinion. As long as they loved Jesus, they could do whatever they wanted to, and that gave them a license to be whatever, you know. So this kind of gives you a view of why Eunice Cole is so, they say that she mumbles under her breath. She's very direct. She's very mean. She's very, she, you know, she has this attitude problem, and it gets her in trouble a lot, not only with witchcraft, but with a lot of other things too. But you have to think that maybe she was practicing her spirituality, her, well, since it's part of Christianity, we'll call it a religion, okay? But this guy got disenfranchised, like I say. He got pushed out and was like, you've got to go. You cannot practice whatever this is here. But they followed him. They went on ahead and they followed him, no problem. And they ended up getting, when they got to Hampton, they got, 40 acres? Yeah, 40 acres. And I think there was already a house on it too that took up like half an acre. Like, it was a really awesome house, you know. And so they were doing good, you know. They were doing good there for a while. We don't have that much more information about the Reverend, but I felt like it was very, very pertinent for you guys to know, because I kind of made the connection that her attitude has a lot to do with her religion and her beliefs. Okay, and so that's one thing we got to remember as we talk about this trial. So Eunice Cole gets accused of witchcraft, like I say, 3 times. And so once in 1656, and then again in, let's see, it goes 1648, 1651, and then 1654. That she had various charges then. And then in 1656, she gets accused, but she's not convicted. Okay, and then she ends up getting in trouble again sometime in 1670 something, and then she stays in jail for a while during the second trial. Okay, she stays in jail for a while, but her husband, okay, William, his name is William, by the way, and we're going to talk about William in just a second, but her husband was about 20 or 30 years older than her, because we're not exactly sure what day she was born. We just know she was born in 1590 in England. And so by the time they got to America, they were already like she was already in her 40s. And so if he was like 20 to 30 years older than her, then he was already in his 60s. You see what I mean? And so while she was in jail, she petitioned to get out because her husband had requested her to come and take care of him because he was fixing to pass away. And so she gets granted that release, and she goes and she takes care of her husband, of course, until he passes away. So William Cole passes away on May 26th, okay, of 1662. And this broke Eunice straight up. She was so upset and depressed when her husband died. It was just, it's an awful thing. You thought her attitude was bad in the beginning, but this time it's just gotten so much worse. Okay, but you got to remember that this is also part of her religion. So what she would do, like I told you guys earlier, she would like mumble to herself. She had this wild look. Her and William never had any children, so of course she's looked out sideways for that. She said that they said that she would make bread ferment in some way, and so this fermentation would make her smell. And I guess like back then it was just okay for these constables to just like hit people if they wanted to, and so they would hit Eunice like if she smelled or if she looked a certain way, because she, you know, evidently she wasn't keeping up with her appearance, or, you know, the appearance they wanted her to have at the time. You know what I mean? And you know, because she didn't care. She had this religion as to where, well, I love God, and so that's all I need to do. I don't have to be nice to anybody. I don't have to do anything. And, you know, I can say that what these constables are doing is wrong. They shouldn't be hitting me. You know what I mean? And she would voice that. And she would be slandering her neighbors and all kinds of things. I mean, she just made herself a target, unfortunately, in this scenario. And so now she is repeatedly tried, and she's finally imprisoned. She's not put to death, like I say, but she stays in jail for the majority of the time she is in Boston. I mean, if it's not for witchcraft, it's for something else. It's for her saying something out of order, because back then they had societal rules, and you had to be act a certain type of way, and all this other kind of stuff. And now she's from England. Maybe they didn't have those certain ways back then, but also she had her religion. And that religion, in her mind, she was already good with God. So she could say whatever she wanted to. So 1673 rolls around, and Eunice gets in trouble. And this time it's not good. She tries to entice a girl to come and stay with her. Okay. She tries to entice her with like plums, some kind of fruit. Okay. And this was not a good thing. Okay. But there's another way to look at this. Okay. So anyway, she tries to ask, she says, hey, I have plums. Will you come stay with me? The little girl says no. And so she tries to force her. She tries to drag her away, which is not a good thing, obviously, okay? But the little girl was an orphan, and she had been with 3 different families. She was 9 years old, and by the time she was 9, she had already been with 3 different families. So we have Eunice, who doesn't have a husband anymore. She's alone in her little cottage, all by herself, looking raggedy, having a sour attitude. Maybe she thought she could give this girl a true home because Eunice was childless. Maybe she wanted children, but she couldn't have children because she was an indentured servant. That might have been part of the rule, that she couldn't have children while she was an indentured servant. And then by the time she got out of her contract, she was technically too old to have a kid, for back then anyway. So you got to think, I don't condone her trying to take a kid, okay? 100%, I do not condone that. No, I do not. I'm just saying that she may have just felt like she was just so incredibly lonely, and she never had a kid. And so maybe she just wanted to have a child of her own. And maybe she just got a little bit too crazy with it. So the term, would you like some candy, little girl? You know what I mean? Like that everybody warned us about when we were growing up. Yeah, this is that chick. This is what brought that on. She's the one that made us all say no to the candy from strangers type deal. Yeah. She really was. I'm sorry I had to do the voice, but I just thought that was kind of funny. And so anyway, she gets away from Eunice, but people find out about this, obviously, because the girl tells people. And so Eunice, of course, she gets in trouble because during this time, messing with children and already being a convicted witch at one point, they just figured that she was trying to they just thought that maybe she was just trying to have a kid. So not only did she have this like attempted kidnapping or whatnot, she also was charged in the death of 2 calves. Evidently, she had told a neighbor, if your cow eats my grass, it's a goner, and they took that to heart, and their calves died. Yeah. And so she was said to have raised a cyclone too. Got another storm. Yeah, the storms are. They always got to find something to blame somebody. I mean, I'm telling you. So they have a storm that ends up brewing, and it sank a ship. The cyclone did. Like that's what cyclones do. They sink ships. I mean, there's no. I feel like these men thought they were so smart about being able to tell the weather that they just got really mad when the weather showed up and showed out. You feel me? Because there's just no controlling that, the weather, or the ocean for that matter. The ocean is a fickle bee. She sunk a boat of partygoers because that somebody on that boat had insulted her that morning. Supposedly, that's what they say. Yeah, she has that much power. She can do that. You know what I mean? I'm just kidding. I know that she doesn't. But, this is where we're at. People thought she was a shapeshifter. They saw her shapeshift into eagles, into dogs, and into cats. Okay. She had bewitched the good wife Maston's child by transforming it into an ape with a cloak. Yes, and the girl was like, I saw it with my own two eyes. The mom of the child was like, I saw it. I saw it happen with my own two eyes. The child ended up dying. Yes, so of course they blamed Goody Cole, of course. And so, even though she was in jail at this time, okay, you have to remember that, they say that they saw her like walking around the courtroom, not the courtroom, they saw her walking around the graveyard, like hunched over, and you couldn't really see her face, but you could kind of tell that it was her or whatnot, and they said they saw her figure walking around the gravesite or whatnot, even though she was in jail. And so this added to the whole shapeshifter theory, that she had shapeshifted, got out of jail, and it came to this little baby's funeral, okay? And we know that didn't happen. She didn't shapeshift into no bird or nothing like that, or no cat, no dog. But that's what these people were thinking back then. And so they thought they saw her at the funeral. Now, we have another instance with a child. And I really feel like they were picking on her because she didn't have children, and so she was an easy person to kind of scapegoat. And I have a theory about this next chick as well, okay? And her name is Anna Dalton. And she had a baby, okay? And to her, this baby looked like a demon, okay? Because she said that I have to read this word for word. So she saw that her child had been changed in its cradle, and she feared and hated the thing that was left behind. Her husband pled with her to see the child, but she's like, no, I don't want to see this child. She's looking at it, and it looks like a demon. And so this is what she says, word for word. "'Tis an imp. Don't you see how old and shrewd it is? How wrinkled and ugly? It does not take my milk. It is sucking my blood and wearing me to my skin and bone." So the husband's confused. He doesn't understand why his wife doesn't want to have anything to do with his child. He's not seeing what she's seeing, okay? And so this is what she said to her husband as well. This is another good old quote unquote. She said, "Rake the coals out and put the child in them. Goody Cole will fly fast enough when she hears it screaming, and will come down the chimney in the shape of an owl or a bat, and take that thing away. Then we shall have our little one back." Okay, so what I'm thinking is happening here is something that a lot of people did not know about back then, and that's called postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis. Okay, it's very, very easy to slip into and to not know. I know by experience. Okay, and so I feel like that might have been what was happening with her. She was seeing her child, and her depression was so bad it was a psychosis. This is straight up psychosis, postpartum psychosis, in my opinion. But she's blaming it on somebody, of course. But there's good news. Thankfully, her husband did not put the child in the coals like she asked him to. What he did was he put his hand on her head and he started to pray. He was just saying, "God, please let her see her child as who it is, and and just was like just praying and saying, please take these shadows, which I'm thinking is the depression. Please take the depression away, so that she can love her child again. Okay, and that sounds so super sweet and everything, and it actually helped a lot, because Goody Cole is about to be executed because of supposedly doing, something to this kid. But all of a sudden, the way the light shone through the window, it made this beautiful halo around the baby's head as it was in the cradle. And so Anna looks over at the baby and she finally sees her child. She sees exactly what she needs to see. She recognizes her child, and she takes her child and she cuddles. She's like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I thought that, all this other stuff. And so then they realize, oh crap, Goody Cole is about to be off because she supposedly did something to our kid. Well, she didn't do anything to our kid. Our kid's fine now, that didn't happen. So she sends her husband. She's like, you've got to hurry and go and help her as fast as you possibly can. Get her down, off the gallows, or however they were going to do it. And so he makes it there, and they actually take back into consideration of taking her down so that she wouldn't be guilty. She was not guilty, as a matter of fact. And then she was freed by an order of release on October of 1860, as a matter of fact. Yeah. So October, she was freed, but she, of course, was all alone. She didn't have any children. She did not have anybody. She didn't have anybody, and that's the sad thing about this. She kind of died as she lived, like alone in a cabin, like all by herself, with a lot of cats and stuff like that. That's probably where the whole cat lady thing comes in, But she was tried 3 times for witchcraft and went to jail so many times for so many things. But you got to think of the way she was thinking religiously. So it doesn't stop there when she passes away, unfortunately. No, it does not. They bury her, okay, and to make sure that she was not going to either, I don't know if they were trying to make sure she wasn't going to shapeshift or whatnot, they put a stake through her heart and buried her that way. Even though she was already passed, she was already dead, they desecrated her body by sticking that into her heart, and that was how she was buried, unfortunately. And so the poor thing had a very, very hard life. Very hard life. Oh my God, I can't even believe how hard. They actually reopened the case in 1938. Yeah. In 1938, they reopened it and, of course, said that she was not guilty, And, but, I mean, there ain't much they can do about it now, you know what I mean? But you have to think, like, nobody made the connection on this with her religion and how much she followed that religion with how her attitude was. You see what I'm saying? It's almost as if she definitely preached what she was taught, and she was taught that she was basically invincible and that nobody could do anything to her because she already had her place in heaven, or so she thought, But that's that's religion for you. That's she's so hardcore into her religion that it didn't matter if something was normal for society. If it wasn't normal for her, then it wasn't normal it shouldn't be normal for anybody else. And she didn't have any fear of telling people how she felt, basically. That's what I'm saying. And I have a feeling it's because of that religion that her and her husband followed. It's gotta be. So her poor girl, they actually have a stone and stuff like set up for her, which is kind of neat. After they exonerated her, they have a plaque and stuff up where she's buried, and all that fun stuff. And it's just kind of sad. And the Anna story kind of made me sad because when I was reading that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is straight up postpartum psychosis. I know this is. I know it is. Because I've been there. I didn't let it get too far, but I got there. I was there. I've been there. I know exactly how that feels. It's not the best feeling in the world when you look at your child and you want to love them, but you know you have this. It's overwhelming having a child, especially your first one. Very, very much so overwhelming. And so, but they do say there's a few legends about her that are definitely worth mentioning. She likes to haunt stuff. Yeah. They say that her unrest spirit wanders around the Hamptons, and if you see it, it's like a ghost that has a stake coming out of her chest. Yes. It's very sad indeed. Like I say, Anna, in my opinion, straight up had postpartum psychosis. And, you know, even though praying it away is not going to really do the trick, it's not going to do it just like that. Although, you know, miracles have happened. Miracles happen every day, you know, so that's definitely a thing that could happen. But we got to think about how Goody Cole was and her religion, her spirituality, you know, and that's what made her. That's what made her and her attitude, okay? But people saw this as witchcraft. You know what I mean? They saw this as her being a witch because she was old. She was a hag. She mumbled when she talked. You know, she hit all the boxes. She hit all the boxes, unfortunately, you know? And for them to say, for these constables to hit her and berate her because she smelled and she wasn't as kempt as they wanted her to be, you know, and she ends up going and saying a lot of bad things against the constables, and they end up putting her in jail just for that, just because she has an opinion on how they treat her. And it makes no sense to me whatsoever. Now, Goody Cole has been the only one that was convicted of witchcraft in New Jersey. The only person that has been convicted of witchcraft in New Jersey is Eunice Cole, okay? She was exonerated, like I told you guys, in 1938, right? And so on the 300th anniversary of the town of Hampton, they established the Goody Cole Society, and they made these dolls and sold them, you know, basically to kind of help the town and celebrate, you know. I wouldn't mind having one of those dolls, to be honest with you. Just imagine how much that would be now. A doll of Eunice Cole, you know. Hopefully they didn't have like a stake going through her heart. I doubt it. I'm sure they didn't. But, you know, I mean, you never know. You just never know. So that is the story of Eunice Cole. Her trek from England to America, coming from indentured servant to landowner, okay? Even though she had a bit of a different religious practice than most people over there in the New World and the New England, she still followed her old ways. And yes, she was sour. She had a sour attitude. She was old by the time, and old for those times, by the time she got there to America, by the time she got here to America. And so you have to take in consideration, I can't believe nobody made the connection with her religion, which I had never heard of, so I had to look it up. And then they were talking about her attitude. And I was like, she's just telling people how she feels because this is part of her religion. You know, they are exempt. They can do no harm, basically. If you love God, that's all you need. And you can do whatever you want. You can break the 10 Commandments. But as long as you love God, you're fine. That was her religion. And so she would voice her opinions to people saying maybe they shouldn't wear this, or your hair shouldn't look like that, even though she was unkempt herself. But she didn't have a lot of money. I mean, their voyage was paid by the man that engendered them as servants. And so, like I say, they didn't have a lot of money. And by the time she went to prison so many times, they had actually seized her assets, like seized the 40 acres and all that stuff. And so she didn't have anything anymore. She lived and died in an old cabin. And when they found her, they decided to bury her with a stake through her heart, unfortunately. So if you ever go to Hampton and you see a ghost walking around with a big stick sticking out of your chest, you'll know that's Eunice Cole, the only one in New Jersey to ever be convicted of witchcraft. Yes. So I hope you guys like this story today. I liked researching it. It was hard to get information on this girl. I actually read the whole trial transcript, and that was the best information that I could get, and it was absolutely wild. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will have another one up for you guys in just a few days. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I'm just trying to grow to 500, and that would just be absolutely amazing if I hit that goal. And then we can start traveling, and I can start telling you guys stories, and we can hike and learn about stuff, and it'll be fun. I promise you. I will make it fun. I make everything fun. Anyways, I love you guys if nobody's told you that lately. And love yourself. All right? Much love.